Hello and welcome to the second episode of Final Cut Pro Help Live. My name is Jared Ewing and we're going to take you through a couple things here on Final Cut Pro. Today we're going to look at building a template library and a template project. So this process is not for everyone. This is going to be something that is very specific use cases. So it's okay if you don't find anything kind of right off the bat of why you might use this. But throughout building this template, you're going to learn a lot about compound clips and some other tips and tricks that you might use in regular day-to-day projects, not just in these template things. So we're going to jump into Final Cut here and take a look at this. If you are watching this live, go ahead and pop in the chat. Let me know you're here. Any questions you got, you can throw them out there. If you're watching this on replay later on, this will be available. You can then email me questions. The email address is just finalcutprohelp@me.com. Or go over to the website. We're at nawesomeguide.com. So I'm definitely available. We want to answer your stuff, and that's where you can reach me. So I'm going to jump in here to Final Cut and start by showing you what I have in this library. This library is very empty. There's only an event and a couple projects and a couple clips. The video I'm going to be using is all blurred out, so the actual video can be just about anything. Don't worry about the clips themselves. Just use your own content and put it in where it's needed. So we're going to do that now. We're going to switch over to Final Cut, and I'm going to get rid of my face here so you don't have to worry about looking at me the entire time. And we're going to jump into this. So if you do have any questions, please pop them into the chat, and we'll be here to help out with that. All right, so again, this is Final Cut Pro 10. It is the latest version, so this is 10.4. And I have this library. I just called it template. It's just a nothing special library, just a normal Final Cut library. And then we have an event. And I'm going to show you what we're going to be building first, and then we'll dive in and actually build it from scratch. So I'm going to show you a finished project that was used with this template. And this project, it only has one clip here, but if we go into it and actually break this up, you'll see that it's a compound clip. And then in this compound clip, we have a logo that's on the top portion. We have a little opening video, which I just used the Final Cut Pro Help Live opening video, so you can see that one. And then there's three segments. These three segments, and then a closing at the end. These three segments are actually compound clips as well, which if we open them up, we can see a little title opener and then a couple clips along with some titles in front of each of these. These clips also have volume changes to them, and you can even see a little change in the opacity to make it a little bit darker there. So we're going to show you a couple different things here and how to build this little project. And I'm just using the left and the right arrows next to the project name here. This allows me to go in or back out of the compound clips. And we're going to be doing that a lot. So you'll see me moving up there. Now, if you're been editing with Final Cut Pro 10, this raw project is probably more what you're used to. You're used to seeing a lot of clips on the storyline there with the titles. We got the little logo in the corner. And this is fine. There's nothing wrong with doing this. And everything I'm showing you is just a kind of way of cleaning up a project. But especially if you're going to be using this as a template and you want to reuse all of this kind of layout in this format, that's where building this template project is going to help. So this is the actual template project that we're going to create. What you'll see here is that we have one compound clip that I just called project name or master compound clip. And when you open that, you're able to see all these placeholders. So there's a placeholder for the logo that goes in the corner, for the opener that's going to be used, for the credits at the end, and even our segments here. If we go into them, they're all placeholders. I just used a color bar clip. All of these are placeholders that we can just drop in video clips later on to actually build the template. So let's go ahead and create a new project, and we're going to build this template from scratch. So I'm just going to go up to File, New, and select Project. You can also use the shortcut Command N. And we'll just call this a template. And let's do template project 2 is going to be our one here. And then I'm going to use the automatic settings. You can set them manually if you know exactly the format that you're going to want these projects in, but I'm just going to say use automatic so that it takes the video clip that I first put in there. Okay, so now we have an empty project with nothing in it. This is just blank, just waiting to be essentially for clips to be used. So one of the biggest ones that I like to use is going to be over in the titles and generators sidebar. And we have a couple different generators here. One of these is elements. And the elements has a placeholder generator. So I'm actually going to bring this placeholder down onto the timeline here for the project. And you can set and change these resolutions as you're going to actually use with your project. So whatever your video clips are that you're going to use in the project, or the way that you want to export this project, that's going to dictate what you want to do here as far as format, resolution, and frame rate. Don't worry if you're not 100% sure on what these are supposed to be. You can change them later on. Okay, so now we have this placeholder on the timeline. And with the placeholder selected, if you go into the inspector at the top right here, under the generator or placeholder options here, you have some options for framing, people, gender. It's pretty wild how much information and how many customizations you can make to this generator, but you can definitely go in and adjust the way that this placeholder looks. So if you know all of the interviews you're going to put in and all the video clips you're going to add are all going to be indoor in a studio somewhere, you can go in and change that so that the background that's used in these placeholders is similar to what you're actually going to use. Really, this is going above and beyond on any template that you would necessarily need. It's not necessary, but if you're building this for someone else, it can be helpful to have these placeholders visually look like what the shots are going to be. And then you can also check this option. I like to do this with view notes. And then on the second inspector here, there's an option for notes. So you can type in what this is going to be. So this first placeholder is going to be our opening video clip. So I'll just type in opening. And you can adjust the time just by dragging the time. So we'll say this is about a 10-second opener. Now I'm going to copy and paste just using Command C and Command V with that placeholder, because I'm going to use this as also as the closing, so for the credits at the end. And just to make it a little bit different, we're going to have no people in this one, and we'll just do a long shot of the sky there. Okay, so that's the first little part of it. Now after the initial opener happens, we're going to transition into a clip. And I have a couple different clips here that I can use kind of as placeholder clips if you must here, that essentially can be used. So all of these blurred videos, I'm just using this as sample clips. So what's going to happen after, I'm going to get rid of this gap here. After the initial placeholder, we're going to transition into 3 different clips. And we're just going to use a couple random little pieces of video here. So I have 3 different clips, and these clips are actually part of a segment. So it's going to be the kind of the first segment, and there's 3 segments in this project. So with this segment, I'm going to have a title. So we're going to go up here and get a, let's get an intro title. Let's see. There's one I used in the placeholder. Let's see. We'll do the reveal one. That one's okay. So we're going to use this reveal as the title, and this kind of introduces our clip. And then we go into the clips themselves. And let's do like a little lower third here after the clip starts. And this is just general editing here, so I'm not going into too much detail on what we're creating with each of these clips. But essentially what's happening is we have a placeholder that's the opening. Think of this like a TV show. We have the opening credits or opening title sequence. It transitions into a title that's explaining what the next couple clips are going to be. And then we have a lower third on each of the clips at the beginning of them. So this is kind of one segment with these 3 clips. And with the segment includes all of these. So I'm going to select all 3 of those clips, including the opening title. And I'm going to right-click or control-click on the clip. And there's an option that says New Compound Clip. Shortcut for that is Option G. So you can use that to really quickly create a compound clip. And this is going to be the first segment. So I'll just type in first here. So now I have a compound clip here for that initial segment. I can copy that just using Command C and paste it, Command V, to create 3 separate segments. Now here's the problem with doing that. I'm going to go on the second segment, and I'm going to rename it, because this is actually the second one. So I'm going to rename it second. And notice when I do that, the first segment also changed to be called second. And that's because these compound clips are actually all identical. So right now, any changes we make to the first compound clip, or really any of them, is going to affect all 3 compound clips. And we don't want that. What we want is all 3 of these to be separate. So to keep them separated, we have to tell Final Cut that they are different. So I want this first segment to be a new one. So I'm going to go up to the menu bar. And under the clip menu, there's an option here that says Reference New Parent Clip. And that's what you're going to want to click. What this does, you might not see any change there other than it added this copy here. But this separated it from the actual second clip. So now if I rename this clip back to first, any changes I make to this first compound clip do not affect the second one, and I'll do the same thing with the third. So the third compound clip is selected, go up to modify, go up to clip and choose reference new parent clip. And then I strongly encourage right-clicking or control-clicking on these clips and renaming these. This just keeps things organized, especially if we're going to turn this into a template that we're going to be reusing. Renaming all of these clips is extremely important. Awesome. So that creates our 3 compound clips. And now each of these, if we double-click and go into them, we have these sample clips that are being used, but we can just go up, select a new clip, say this part, and when I drag it onto a clip, it's going to bring up an option to replace it. And I usually choose here replace from start or replace from end. And what this does is just replaces that clip but keeps the timing the same, which is really nice. So the next part of it that you might have seen, let me switch back to the other template project so you can see this. It's a little bit trickier to explain, but you should be able to see it here in the template. So with our finished project, going into one of these segments, what actually happens with each of these clips after this title shows up, we transition into this first part, which has, in this case, the welcome message. So this welcome message, while that's actually on screen, the audio for this clip is lowered. So if you were to play this, you can actually hear the person talking, but you can't necessarily hear them clearly because it's background audio, because we really want you focused on and reading the title at this point. But when the title goes away, the volume of that background clip, which are these keyframes, raises, and then the actual interview is done. And that's great. That's exactly what we want to have happened. So switching back to the template that we're building, we could modify the audio for this first clip. So the way you would do that is just hold down Option, click on the audio line there to add a keyframe, and then do a second keyframe. And then I can lower that audio. And let me zoom in. I'm using Shift-Z to fit the timeline there, zoom into it. So now what happens is exactly what I showed you on the other project. The title happens on the bottom, the audio is lowered, and then when the title goes away, the audio raises so that you can focus on the actual content that's happening. Here's the problem with that when we're talking about building a template project. If I find another interview, let's say this guy here, that I want to use, I can select it, drag it down, and we're going to get an option here, the whole replace option. I'll say replace from end. But notice my audio keyframes go away. So that means that every time we replace the clip in this template, we're going to have to go through and add those keyframes again. And that's something that's fine. It's not a huge deal to do it. But if you're going to be using this template over and over and over again, it's going to be nice to not have to worry about those steps. So I'm going to do Command-Z to step back, and I'll show you how to do that. So instead of adding the keyframes here on this clip, I'm going to use Command-Z to undo that, get rid of those keyframes. I'm actually going to turn this into a compound clip as well. So I'm going to hold Control and say New Compound Clip. And then you can name this as like Video 1, definitely, if you can, keep these names something that helps out with you as far as the organization goes. So now I have a compound clip, and if I double click on it, there we go. I can see the clip, and that's exactly what I would expect. But if I back up, I can change the audio on this compound clip, adding 2 keyframes again, and then lowering the first portion of the audio. So now what happens is same thing as before. The audio is lower at the beginning, and then when it gets to this keyframe, it starts to raise up to the normal volume, and we can see everything there. So that's great. But the benefit now is if we open up this compound clip and I go to replace it with that other guy, choose replace from end, I can also hit T while I'm in here to bring up the tool here to be able to trim it and adjust where the portion of the video is that's playing. But if I go back, notice the audio keyframes remain. So now I don't have to worry about adding these keyframes every single time. I can just do it on these couple compound clips. Same thing here. I'll make this a new compound clip and make this one a new compound clip. And you can use Option G as well. And then holding Option, I'll add our keyframes in for the audio. Lower it. And that little bit of work there to add these couple keyframes and doing a compound clip, that means that I'm avoiding having to add these every single time I replace these clips. And especially if you're building a template, this is a great way to save some time. And that's really what you want to do in the long run, is just cut as many corners as you can so you don't have to redo steps every single time. So that's how we work with the audio and we get that going, and that's essentially what the compound clips are for. And going back to the initial project, our finished project here, there's a couple other things I want to point out. I did turn the entire project, everything here, into one compound clip. And the reason for that is now I can apply a filter or a change in the audio or anything else to the entire project. And that's just by selecting the project. Now any filters, effects, all that good stuff affects all of it. And this helps with the audio too, especially if you're mixing clips. You can go in here, enable audio enhancements. And when we do the show here next to it, I'll get rid of these configurations. We don't need to see that. But with the audio enhancements, you can do an enhancement like loudness or even noise removal. And loudness is probably the biggest one that I see used here, because this then essentially makes it uniform across the entire clip. So if you have quiet portions of this project and louder portions, it all mixes together and makes it one thing. And so that's a nice reason to make everything a compound clip. Definitely not necessary, but can help. So that's the initial compound clip. Let's do the logo. The logo is another thing that a lot of people like for projects. So this logo, looking at the finished template, we have this just as a kind of a stock one, and it's in the lower right corner there. And this, you might notice, is also a compound clip. And here's the reason I did that. Let me show you. I'm going to go back to the template that we're building. And I do have my logo as a clip somewhere in here. There it is. So I'm going to add this logo. And just like we did with the audio, I could go up here and use the transform tools and change the placement of the logo and move it down to the corner. But then if I ever wanted to replace that logo, I would have to do that every single time. So this is where we're going to use another compound clip. So let me get rid of this spot here. And this is our logo file, so let me get that. And I'm going to drag this the length of the project. I'm going to select it and either do Option G or just right-click and do New Compound Clip. And we're going to call this the logo. So now, with this logo compound clip, I can make the adjustments using the transform tools here. So I'm going to scale this and put it in the corner. I do like to go up to View and choose Show Title and Action Safe Zones so I can place it correctly. Use the transform tool in the corner. And that's a little big. Let's go a little smaller. And I'm going to lower the opacity for that logo to about, we'll do 50%. So now I have a logo that's in the corner here with the lower opacity. And at any time, if I wanted to, I can open that compound clip and replace it with something else. I'm just going to use a random video clip here so you can see it. I'm going to do replace it and retime to fit. And now if I go back, notice that clip is automatically shrunk down, put it in the corner, and the opacity change is added to it. So especially if you're going to reuse this project with multiple clients and other places, you might be using different logos. That's a great way to get those things replaced. One side note on this logo, because I know this is something a lot of people have trouble with, and they have to use tools like Photoshop and other applications. But I want to show you my logo file here, because this is the original logo file, and it's got a black background. So if I put that in there, you would see this black background, and it would be kind of a pain, and there's filters and things that you can add in. But this is just a little trick that not a lot of people know about. I'm going to open up the Pages application. And Pages, for the most part, is a free application you can get from Apple with the purchase of your Mac. And with the logo added in, under the Format sidebar here, under Image, there's an option for Instant Alpha. And this is something that essentially we're just going to click to take away that background. And I really didn't do much else. I just clicked it. And there's the image, transparent without the black background. I'm going to go up to Edit and choose to copy that image. And I'm going to open up the Preview application. And with Preview open, I'm going to hit Command V to paste that in. I'm going to do this from Clipboard. And here's the image, no black background. I can save it. I'll put it on the desktop as the logo. And actually, let me do one thing here. So I'm doing his logo. Make sure the format is PNG and that you keep the alpha state. Alpha is the biggest thing. That's that transparency behind it, so there's no black background. Call it Logo 2 since I already have it back there. And now, if I take this logo, I'm going to do Command Tab to switch into Final Cut. If it brings it up, it might not because it's minimized. Yeah, it's minimized. Get up here, Final Cut. We need you. Okay, well, we'll just do it this way. So I'm doing it from the background. Here's my logo tube, and I'll just drop that on. Notice now this logo has the transparent background. We can see through it to everything that's behind it. So I did this with a black background, but that's an easy way to make really any background transparent, is to use that instant alpha feature of Pages, which is very good. I mean, it's just a nice little feature that not a lot of people use. So I'd recommend doing that to create those transparent backgrounds. Okay, so let me go back to the finished template, which is our template project. So just kind of to review, because that's really all there is to creating a template project, is just figuring out what you need in the project and what you're going to reuse. So in this segment, we looked at the logo, which is a compound clip, and the compound clip itself will actually lower it into the corner. We have an opening video and credits at the end, and we have 3 segments here. Inside a segment, there's a couple clips with some placeholder titles that can be easily changed and adjusted. The clips themselves, the actual video clips that would be added to these, we've added a compound clip around those to then adjust the audio for them. This can also be used to adjust things like opacity and filters, effects, all of that kind of stuff. So you'll actually see this. There is an opacity change for this compound clip that was added. And when it gets the audio coming up, then you can see the opacity also increases. So just those little things that you can apply to this template so that you don't have to redo those steps every single time. One of the projects I'm working on right now has me building the same types of videos over and over and over again. And using a template is one of the best ways to have to avoid redoing steps, especially when you know it's going to be the same thing. So that's building a template project. Really similar to building any other kind of project. You're just really selecting them and replacing what's there with these placeholder items. So the other part of it then is using the template project. So this project's here. I don't want to edit or change the template. So just make sure every time when you go to use this, you're going to select it and you're going to go up to edit. And there's an option here to duplicate that project. But make sure that you choose to duplicate it as a snapshot. This as a snapshot is extremely important. If you remember before, when we duplicated these segments, we had to go in with a segment, go up to clip, and say reference new parent clip. And the reason we did that is so that one clip doesn't affect the other. That's the same thing, essentially what happens when you do this duplicate project as snapshot. Any of those compound clips, or if you're doing a multicam project, multicam clips also kind of fit into this. If you're using any of those, they're going to reference that initial template project. So if you just went up and did duplicate project, everything you do on that new project that's in any of those compound clips is going to break or affect your template, and you don't want that. So just make sure to do duplicate project as snapshot. If you want, do duplicate project and mess around with it, and you'll see what happens. But that's the important thing with actually using these templates. Now we're going to take it one step kind of higher up on the hierarchy here, because this was dealing with a project, but you can also make a template library from those projects. So if you know you're going to have an entire library, like we have here with template, that has projects and other content in it that you want to reuse, you can do that. Just make a template, like we have a library here, and we just called it template. Just select this library, go up to File here, and let me see if we got it. Yeah, and we have down here this option to consolidate the library media. So this consolidate, when you do this, it copies everything into that library. So I already did this, so it's already done. So now what I can do is minimize this. Here's the template library. I'm going to right-click on it and choose Duplicate. And there's a duplicated library. It's got a couple gigs in it, so it's taking a second here to copy over. But now this template copy, we can rename it. We'll call it template library. This template library just here in the Finder at any point could be duplicated and then reused over and over. So I could go into the template library, remove anything that should not be in here. Things like these clips in here that I'm not reusing, I can go in and just do Command Delete to remove those clips. And then all it's going to do then is have just the empty projects that we were using. So that's a great way if you know you have media and content that you want to reuse over and over again. Just build a template library, and then you can reuse those very simply. You don't have to import the same media multiple times. You can just duplicate a library. So I hope that provides some tips and some tricks about creating a template library using Final Cut Pro 10. I think it's something that is underused as far as working with compound clips and all of that. In other applications, compound clips called nesting, and I've seen some things where people like to avoid nesting, but I think it really helps out in keeping projects and other content inside Final Cut Pro organized. There was one other thing that I did forget about the template projects that I wanted to make sure to point out, because this is something that I've done in the newer projects. But when you have a template project like this and you're working with these compound clips, what you want to be careful of is extending beyond the reach of a clip. And that might seem a little strange, and here's what I mean. Notice this project here. We have the logos, we have the 3 segments here, but then there's this area after the credits where it's just gray for a while, and then we get to the end here, there's kind of this X'd out part. If you were to export this project right now, all of this would just be a black space. It'd just be empty. And we can even see it here in the clip. We have the title, the credits come up, and then it's just black at the end. So make sure to adjust this compound clip. Just go all the way back and then go to the right. And it'll stop then once the end of the project happens. Now if we open this, notice our endpoint is at the correct spot. Really great, really easy way to avoid any kind of unnecessary exports, but it also works on the reverse. So if I wanted to add in another segment here, I'm going to copy segment 4 and paste it in here. Make sure to go up to clip and reference a new parent clip. I'm going to add in a transition. We want to extend our logo, which is a compound clip. That's fine. But notice all this is X'd out. All you have to do is get this out point to move over to the right, and that happens by going back a step and adjusting the compound clip. So now I extended it, boom, we're done. I can go into it. Notice everything's moved back to where it was. So just be careful with that. If you're exporting things, I've seen a lot of projects where it's a 30-minute project and really there's only 15 minutes of content. So make sure you're just exporting the correct things by adjusting those compound clips. So if you do have any questions, just pop them in the chat there. Otherwise, you can send an email to finalcutprohelp@me.com. You can follow me on Instagram at finalcutprohelp. And on Instagram, every day we've been posting a shortcut and just a little quick tip about how to use that shortcut. So if you're newer to Final Cut, definitely use that as a way to learn it and get used to it. We are at about a half hour here, so that's about the time I was looking to get to. I don't see any questions right now in the chat, so that is awesome. Nothing else for me to do. If you do have the questions, just make sure to send an email or subscribe to the channel because we will have additional videos coming up shortly. And if you're interested in learning kind of the next level after Final Cut or kind of a nice supplement to Final Cut, it's going to be Motion. Motion is an application that's $49 from the Mac App Store. And it really allows you to build any of the titles, any of the transitions, the effects that you see. A lot of the effects that are built in to Final Cut were created with Motion. So if you go over to any of these and you're looking at these lower thirds and these titles that were used, if you control click on them or right click on them, there's an option that says open a copy in Motion. If you want to learn Motion, I'm working on another guide right now, which is an awesome guide to Motion 5. That'll be coming out shortly. If you're interested in learning Motion, send me an email right now. We're in the process of working on that book, and if you want to get an early access to it, just shoot me an email and I'll get you hooked up with that. Otherwise, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your evening and your day out there. And if you're watching this on replay, drop in a little message there in the chat. Let me know you're watching it and what you thought. And if you have topics for the next episode, we're going to do one of these hopefully at the first of every month. Just send me an email or pop it in the chat. Let me know what you want to see, and we'll get you covered there. So thank you guys. Have a wonderful rest of your day.